Welcome to MG Government School English Medium Sri Madhapur. I am Ramakant Sharma, Principal. Students, reading. Here we will read books for you. Dear students, reading of books enhances your knowledge. Books are the best friends. We will meet our sweet friends in this section. In this section, we will read books for you. You have to develop the understanding and try to grasp the meaning. यहाँ हम आपके लिए कुछ पुस्तकें पढ़ेंगे. आप यहाँ पर अपनी रीडिंग, अपनी लिसनिंग कैपेसिटी को डेवलप करिए so that you can easily develop your English language. हमें यहाँ जो पुस्तकें पढ़ने को मिलेंगी वो महान लेखकों द्वारा लिखी गई है. The book we are going to read here is an autobiography written by M.K. Gandhi, The Story of My Experiments with Truth. And this book is written originally by M.K. Gandhi, and this is translated from Gujarati by Mahadev Desai. This book is available at all the leading stores of our country, and as I have told you that I have written the first chapter earlier. I have read the first chapter earlier, and now I am going to read chapter 2, Childhood. So try to read with me. Let us proceed towards the reading. I must have been about 7 when my father left Porbandar for Rajkot to become a member of the Rajasthani court. There I was put into a primary school, and I can well recollect those days, including the names and other particulars of the teachers who taught me. As at Porbandar, so here, there is hardly anything to note about my studies. I could only have been a mediocre student. From this school, I went to the suburban school and thence to the high school. Having already reached my 12th year, I do not remember having ever told a lie. During this short period, either to my teachers or to my schoolmates, I used to be very shy and avoided all company. My books and my lessons were my sole companions. To be at school at the stroke of the hour and to run back home as soon as the school closed, that was my daily habit. I literally ran back because I could not bear to talk anybody. I was even afraid lest anyone should poke fun at me. There is an incident which occurred at the examination during my first year at the high school and which is worth recording. Mr. Gales, the educational inspector, had come on a visit of inspection. He had set 5 words to write as a spelling exercise. One of the words like cattle. I had misspelled it. The teacher tried to prompt me with the point of his boot, but I would not be prompted. I was beyond me to see that he wanted me to copy the spelling from my neighbor's slate. For I had thought that the teacher was there to supervise us against copying. The result was that all the boys except myself were found to have spelled every word correctly. Only I had been stupid. The teacher tried later to bring this stupidity home to me, but without effect. I never could learn the art of copying. Yet the incident did not in the least diminish my respect for my teachers. I was by nature blind to the faults of elders. Later, I came to know of many other failings of this teacher, but my regard for him remained the same, for I had learned to carry out the orders of elders, not to scan their actions. Two other incidents belonging to the same period have always clung to my memory. As a rule, I had to distaste for any reading beyond my school books. The daily lessons had to be done because I disliked being taken to task by my teacher as much as I disliked deceiving him. Therefore, I would do the lessons, but often without my mind in them. Thus, when even the lessons could not be done properly, there was of course no question of any extra reading. But somehow my eyes fell on a book purchased by my father. It was Shravana Pitra Bhakti Natak, a play about Shravana's devotion to his parents. I read it with intense interest. There came to our place about the same time itinerant showman. One of the pictures I was shown of Shravana carrying by means of slings fitted for his shoulder his blind parents on a pilgrimage. The book and the picture left an indelible impression on my mind. Here is an example for you to copy, I said to myself. The agonized lament of parents over Shravana's death is still fresh in my memory. The melting tune moved me deeply, and I played it on a concertina which my father had purchased for me. There was a similar incident connected with another play. Just about this time, I had secured my father's permission to see a play performed by a certain dramatic company. This play, Harishchandra, captured my heart. I could never be tired of seeing it, but how often should I be permitted to go? It haunted me, and I must have acted Harishchandra to myself times without number. Why should not all be truthful like Harishchandra? Was the question I asked myself day and night. To follow truth and to go through all the ordeals Harishchandra went through was the one ideal it inspired in me. I literally believed in the story of Harishchandra. The thought of it all often made me weep. My common sense tells me today that Harishchandra could not have been a historical character. Still, both Harishchandra and Shravana are living realities for me, and I am sure I should be moved as before if I were to read those plays again today. Chapter 3. Child Marriage. Much as I wish that I had not to write this chapter, I know that I shall have to swallow many such bitter draughts in the course of this narrative, and I cannot do otherwise. If I claim to be a worshipper of truth, it is my painful duty to have to record here my marriage at the age of 13. As I see the youngsters of the same age about me who are under my care, and think of my own marriage, I am inclined to pity myself and to congratulate them on having escaped my lot. I can see no moral argument in support of such a preposterously early marriage. Let the readers make no mistake. I was married, not betrothed. For in Kathiawar there are two distinct rites, betrothal and marriage. Betrothal is a preliminary promise on the part of the parents of the boy and the girl to join them in marriage, and it is not inviolable. The death of the boy entails no widowhood on the girl. It is an agreement purely between the parents, and the children have no concern with it. Often they are not even informed of it. It appears that I was betrothed thrice, though without my knowledge. I was told that two girls chosen for me had died in turn, and therefore I infer that I was betrothed 3 times. I have a faint recollection, however, that the third betrothal took place in my 7th year, and I do not recollect having been informed about it. In the present chapter, I am talking about my marriage, of which I have the clearest recollection. It will be remembered that we were 3 brothers. The first was already married. The elders decided to marry my second brother, who was 2 or 3 years my senior, a cousin, possibly a year older, and me, all at the same time. In doing so, there was no thought of our welfare, much less our wishes. It was purely a question of their own convenience and economy. Marriage among Hindus is no simple matter. The parents of the bride and bridegroom, often bring themselves to ruin over it. They waste their substance, they waste their time. Months are taken up over the preparations, in making clothes and ornaments, and in preparing budgets for dinners. Each tries to outdo the other in the number and variety of courses to be prepared. Women, whether they have a voice or no, sing themselves hoarse, even get ill, and disturb the peace of their neighbors. These in their turn quietly put up with all the turmoil and bustle, all the dirt and filth, representing the remain of feasts, because they know that a time will come when they all will be behaving in the same manner. It would be better, thought my elders, to have all this bother over at the same time, less expense and greater eclat. For money could be freely spent if it had only be to be spent once instead of thrice. My father and my uncle were both old, and we were the last children they had to marry. It is likely that they wanted to have the last best time of their lives. In view of all these considerations, a triple wedding was decided upon, and as I have said before, months were taken up in preparation for it. It was only through these preparations that we got warning of coming event. I do not think it meant to me anything more than the prospect of good clothes to wear, drum beating, marriage processions, rich dinners, and a strange girl to play with. The colonel's side desire came later. I proposed to draw the curtain over my shame, except for a few details worth recording. To these I shall come later. But even they have little to do with the central idea I have kept before me in writing this story. So my brother and I were both taken to Porbandar from Gujarat, Rajkot. There are some amusing details of the preliminaries to the final drama. Example, Gracia, smearing our bodies all over with turmeric paste, and I must omit them. My father was a divan, but nevertheless a servant, and all the more so because he was in favor with the Thakur Sahib. The latter would not let him go until the last moment, and when he did so, he ordered for my father special stage coaches, reducing the journey by 2 days. But the fates had willed otherwise. Porbandar is 120 miles from Rajkot. A car journey of 5 days. My father did the distance in 3, but the coach toppled over in third stage, and he sustained 7 severe injuries. He arrived bandaged all over. Both his and our interest in the coming event was half destroyed, but the ceremony had to be gone through. For how could the marriage dates be changed? However, I forget my grief over my father's injuries in the childish amusement of the wedding. I was devoted to my parents, but no less I was devoted to the passions that flash his heir too. I had yet to learn that all happiness and pleasure should be sacrificed in devoted service to my parents, and yet, as though by way of punishment for my desire for pleasure, an incident happened which has ever since rankled in my mind and which I will relate later. Nishuk Nalwand thinks renunciation of objects without the renunciation of desires is short-lived, however hard you may try. Whenever I sing this song or hear it sung, this bitter untoward incident rushes to my memory and fills me with shame. My father put a brave face in spite of injuries and took full part in the wedding. As I think of it, I can even today call before my mind's eye the places where he sat as he went through the different details of the ceremony. Little did I dream then that one day I should surely criticize my father for having married me as a child. Everything on that day seemed to me all right and proper pleasing. There was also my own eagerness to get married, and as everything that my father did then struck me as beyond reproach. The recollection of those things is fresh in my memory. I can picture to myself even today how we sat on our wedding days, how we performed the Saptapadi, how we, the newly wedded husband and wife, put the sweet concern into each other's mouth, and how we began to live together. And oh, that first night, 2 innocent children all unwittingly hurled themselves into the ocean of life. My brother's wife had thoroughly coached me about my behavior on the first night. I do not know who had coached my wife. I have never asked her about it, nor I am inclined to do so now. The reader may be sure that we were too nervous to face each other. We were certainly too shy. How was I to talk to her, and what was I to say? The coaching could not carry me far, but no coaching is really necessary in such matters. The impressions of the former birth are potent enough to make all coaching superfluous. We gradually began to know each other and to speak freely together. We were the same age, but I took no time in assuming the authority of a husband. So, dear students, thank you for watching and listening. I hope you will try to understand and develop the understanding of the invaluable ideas, thoughts that are given in these two chapters. Thank you again.